You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Doing good. We are past Wildcard Weekend, and I guess a weekend that's normally kind of the best weekend that football has to offer was kind of another stinker, right? Bunch of blowouts, a couple upsets, but bunch of blowouts, right? The best game by far was the Rams-Lions. Outside of that, relatively boring wild card weekend. There was not a whole lot of entertainment going on.
There's just so many lopsided games, right? And we kind of got it started off with a lopsided game that, wasn't ever really in question. And then, that Dallas game, that game was out of hand. It looked, close there at the end, but it never was. Turnovers reign supreme. I guess that's really the big takeaway. You can't make mistakes. And you certainly cannot have those mistakes immediately haunt you in the NFL playoffs. I'm saying that like that's some, revelation, but like that was kind of the theme of the weekend was mistakes were made, and those mistakes cost teams pretty immediately. And it was just they piled up and became insurmountable. So it was a stinker of a weekend, right? I was glad that the one game that I really did kind of focus in on, I was watching the Cowboys game a little bit, and that game kind of got out of hand, so I went away from it. And but the game that I was really locked in on was Detroit and LA. And I thought, if nothing else, the storylines for it. And I am convinced that the only way that Matthew Stafford is allowed to leave Ford Field is in a wheelchair. Like it's the only way that dude's left that stadium for 12 years when he played there. And for the one game when he came back, he was getting beat up. That Detroit team looked really good, really, really good. And they're going to be a problem. I think they're going to be a tough out. I don't know that they're good enough to get to the Super Bowl, but man, they're going to be a tough out for any team that has to get through them.
Yeah, I think obviously we'll see how this weekend goes, but I do think that they're physical enough to give the Niners a test, right? Now, and that might be the sole difference, right? The Cowboys and Eagles both bounced from the playoffs. Both look soft. Defenses didn't show up. Offensive line play was not good. The Detroit Lions, their defense did not look soft. They were getting after it, and their offensive line is showing why they were clearly one of the best all season long.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was kind of crazy though watching some of those things and seeing how some of the games play down. But the one of the best things is the legend of Baker grows.
The legend of Baker grows, and the legend of Joe Flacco, which I thought would have been the funniest. That was the whole reason why. I mean, I was kind of drunk on the lore of Joe Flacco last week when I picked the Browns to make it to the Super Bowl. Like, yeah, that was a dumb pick. I'm willing to admit that. And I know it's a dumb pick. I think I even said as much when I was making the pick. But man, did he have the opportunity to do the funniest thing possible, and it didn't happen. And that's okay. But the lore, the legend of Joe Flacco kind of returns to its rightful place. Water found its level. I don't know that, his poor performance was really his level, but man, that Baker looked good, right? And the Bucks looked good. CJ Stroud looked good, right? For a rookie, making his first playoff start, like against Cleveland's defense, which had been good all year. I mean, he looked good, and granted, his defense helped him out a little bit with a couple pick sixes for Stroud there, but it was there was a lot of head scratching that went on. I mean, look, the Eagles were tumbling right as they made it to the playoffs. They started 10-1. They ended the season 1-6, right? And then you kind of expected them to lose this game because A, they were on the road. B, they're not playing their best football as we got into the playoffs. You can't end the season on winning one of your last 7 and think that you're gonna all of a sudden a switch is gonna get turned on just because it's the postseason. So I mean that one you could kind of see coming. I don't know that we saw the beatdown that they suffered coming, but you could at least see that outcome. Like that was a very plausible outcome for that game. The Cowboys losing at home was a head scratcher to me. Like they were so good at home this year, so that was inexcusable.
So I have not a dark conspiracy theory, but a conspiracy theory around this coaching carousel and how I think the Cowboys are going to relieve Mike McCarthy from duty. And with Mike Tomlin essentially being a free agent coach, that Jerry Jones is going to make a play for Mike Tomlin to come down because I think Dan Quinn's going to leave. So Mike Tomlin will come down as a player's coach, yet a defensive-minded coach, and be the leader of men for the boys and try and right the ship for the Dallas Cowboys. What I don't have figured out is who his offensive coordinator is going to be.
I like that theory, except for Mike Tomlin today was telling everybody he's coming back to Pittsburgh. Which, smoke and mirrors, right? Smoke and mirrors.
It's almost like the kiss of death. Yeah, the coach's job is fine. 2 weeks later, you're fired.
Well, unless you're Pete Carroll, the next day it's.
Yeah, I do think though that the Cowboys will be looking for a new head coach. I think the Eagles might be looking for a new head coach.
1 year removed from a play or a Super Bowl appearance?
I really do. I mean, you cannot go 1-7 after starting the season 10-1, being heads and shoulders one of the best teams, one of the top 2 teams in the NFL the first 10 weeks of the season, and then to go like that, to finish that way. I would not be surprised if Philadelphia finds themselves in a coaching search this offseason.
Which is crazy because you think about it from the standpoint that there's only 32 teams. There's already 8 head coaching vacancies out there. So if you add 2 more to the list.
And there's a monster out there.
Right.
There's a monster. There's a couple monster free agents that are out there, if you will, to steal a phrase from Kevin. There's a couple monster names that probably have a lot of owners salivating right now.
Right. Maybe
thinking, well, when are you ever going to have a chance at getting Bill Belichick? When are you ever going to have a chance at getting Jim Harbaugh? I think the "what have you done for me lately" crowd is very loud right now.
There is a 0% chance Bill Belichick ends up in Dallas.
0%. I agree. I agree with that.
0. There is no way that Belichick and Jerry Jones get along.
I totally agree with that. Right up until the point where he signs.
0.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those that Belichick very much enjoys. I think that front office control of football personnel type of decisions, and
that's what makes the Chargers job intriguing for Bill Belichick, right? I saw the Falcons. Sorry, a little glitch in the matrix.
Yeah, we saw the Falcons, and then
there's a glitch in the matrix there. I saw the Falcons have publicly said that they've interviewed Bill Belichick. They've also publicly said that they've interviewed Jim Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously they are aggressive right now. I think over the course of the next couple of days, we're going to hear more teams saying, well, we've interviewed this guy. or we're seeking permission, you know.
When you've got all of these coordinators as well that are very much in the, there's a lot of these offensive coordinators I've seen that have 4 or 5 different head coaching, interviews that have been requested. So kind of crazy the kind of the carousel just continues to spin around that all of these guys are vying for the same jobs across the league, and everybody has the same candidates, so to speak.
Yeah, I think what happens is what we'll start to see is once Belichick and Harbaugh, Jim, obviously John's not going anywhere, not in the near future at least. Once those 2 dominoes fall, then I think we start to see a bunch of other things happen. But those 2 dominoes are the first 2 that I think need to fall. And then those other jobs will get filled.
Right. It very well could be too that, we had the same speculation with Harbaugh last year where,
yeah, and then he came back to Michigan. Yeah, whatever his decision is, yeah.
Right. So
I don't know that he's coming back.
I don't think he does either, man. You win that championship. You did virtually the impossible. You won a national championship in Michigan. And
in the midst of all the chaos, right? But I mean, being suspended 6 games in the middle of the season, and
there's all that.
Yes, you kind of got to stick. Yeah, you kind of got to stick your finger up to the Big Ten a little bit. Yes, you won it in spite of feeling jaded towards the Big Ten commissioner and how they did or didn't handle the sign stealing allegations and all that thing. Like, I mean, yes, his ticket's punched at Michigan, but at the same time, he finally accomplished what he said he was going to accomplish. Do you now? All right, now let's take it to the next level and move on, because I like being able to do it the professional way, not the collegiate way.
He was also pretty outspoken leading up to that national championship game about the collegiate model, right? Like he was pretty outspoken about it. But what a way to go out! You beat Nick Saban in his last game ever, right? As a head coach, you beat the guy who eventually took over for Nick Saban in his last game at that school. Like, what a way to end it if that's how you're going to do it. And it's almost like, shades of Pete Carroll, right? When he left USC to go take the Seattle job, there was writing on the wall there. Like, there was NCAA violations, all the stuff surrounding Reggie Bush and, all of that. And so he was like, yeah, I'm getting out of here before this ship goes down. And that ship has gone down. Like, USC really hasn't been all that relevant since. And they suffered some pretty big penalties for it. Not huge, but he saw the writing on the wall.
Yep, they certainly have kind of circled there several times there. So always interesting to see that one. But any ideas or any feels about who's kind of leading candidate at a particular spot, or if you want to kind of call the early shot there?
Greg Roman to Chicago.
Any reason?
A lot of experience with young, mobile quarterbacks.
So you're
between Kaepernick and Lamar Jackson, and whether it is Fields or whether it's Caleb Williams, because Williams is mobile enough. Definitely more arm talent than Lamar or Kaepernick, but still mobile enough. But Greg Roman has had tons of experience building offenses around young quarterbacks, making things easy on them, kind of showing their best attributes. Kaepernick and Lamar, obviously a little bit more mobile, but, being able to apply some of that RPO, which is used frequently in college, right? In a lot of different sets, as an extension of,
that's very good. That's a good call.
The run or the short passing game. So I think that's one that is that's a name that's starting to cycle around here that I think makes sense at least.
I'll say Bieniemy goes ahead and gets hired there in Washington, which I don't think that's a stretch, right? But I think Bieniemy finally gets his nod as a head coach.
Fair enough.
I don't think he does. I think he ends up back in Kansas City.
Wouldn't surprise me either.
Seriously, I think they go. I think they go a different route, and they don't retain the coaching staff, and so Bieniemy says okay, and Andy Reid puts him back on staff.
Possible.
I can see it. And do you think Antonio Pierce gets the Raiders job? The
players sure want him to, right? The team is all in on Antonio Pierce, and he's got a lot of D'Amico Ryan vibe to him, right? Player speaks that language. Players respect him because not only was was he great at what he did, but he's a great leader of men, and they have no problem following in the battle. The Raiders had a decent last quarter of the season with him being the head coach, and yes, they still want to figure out their quarterback position. I think they found kind of their new young running back if they don't want to pay Jacobs in Zamir White. You have
Devontae Adams still there.
Yeah, Devontae Adams still there under contract for another 3 years. Obviously,
you got the premier pass rusher. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Raiders fan, and right now the players are pounding the table hard for Pierce to come back. So I hope the guy gets a crack at it. He showed no reason why he shouldn't, right? Like there's interim coaches that go out and you go, okay, he's not the guy. He did everything right to get the job. And if it doesn't happen, it's going to be really, really unfortunate.
I agree with everything you've said, and I've got 2 words for why it's not going to happen, and that is Mark Davis, because that dude, he won't get out of his own way, much like Jerry down in Dallas, right? He will not get out of his own way. He's going to want the splashy hire. That guy cares more about winning the press conference and winning the season ticket sales than he does winning football games, because he's got it made right now in Vegas with the stadium.
Is he willing to lose his entire locker room, though? I mean, if all your veteran players,
I don't think he cares.
And that's fair. That's a fair point. But if it was just 1 or 2, I think. But when you have all your leaders on that team saying, "Hey, this is the guy,"
it was the same thing before they hired McDaniels, right? It was the same thing. They all wanted whatever, I can't remember his name right offhand, but he was the special teams coordinator that took over in the interim. And all of those guys were like, yes, we want him. And then they go, Mark Davis gets in his own way and goes and hires Josh McDaniels, somehow keeps getting head coaching jobs in this league. And where are they at? Now they're right back here. And I'm just telling you, I don't think he's smart enough to not make the same mistake again.
Maybe I could see them. I could see that lesson having been kind of driven home a little bit, though, right? Then you think about, yes, the Josh McDaniels, hire, right? But I also think about the Josh McDaniels fire in there as well, where they had a team meeting and the Mark Davis went with the guy that stood up and said, hey, we're going to do things the Raiders way. We're not going to worry about doing it somebody else's way or trying to, build the culture to some other organization's type of thing there. And decided, hey, this is a guy that I want leading the charge here, because positional coach gets the interim job, not not one of the coordinators, not something like that. Like I think that there's something to be said about that, and then how he's carried that and how the team has performed under him going down the stretch as well.
So here's another one for you. Not to pivot overly, but if the Cowboys fire McCarthy, do they bring Dan Quinn in as head coach to keep that defense intact? Yes, lackluster in the playoffs, but You get Diggs back, right? You get another year in the same system, and then you bring someone like Joe Brady over from Buffalo to be your offensive coordinator. And that way you have that young, energizing OC.
Or somebody like Johnson from Detroit, right?
Yeah, but I think Johnson's head coach or Detroit, right? Like
Probably.
he's not going anywhere. I'm not
Yeah.
with Joe Brady kind of, with the firing and he bouncing around. I'm not sure that he's sold in Buffalo. He was just the guy up after they fired
Dorsey.
Yeah, Ken Dorsey.
Yeah.
So yeah, does Dan Quinn stay in Dallas to keep that defense intact? Is Jerry happy enough with that? Holistically, one game, yes, you're disappointed, but holistically, are you happy enough with the way the defense has been playing and feel like Dan Quinn can manage the game better than Mike McCarthy? So now you bring in some young, hot offensive coordinator like Joe Brady, who's shown that he can, get the ball into playmakers' hands with what he's done with Buffalo, and try and retool instead of completely reload in Dallas.
Well, Dallas is one of the younger teams in the playoffs there as well. So a very young roster there as well. So yeah, very well could be interesting. I could see that playing out there.
So yeah, kind of. I mean, we'll know more as teams go through interviews, right? This is very, very early. The Falcons are really the only team who's publicly acknowledged interviews at this point. Lots of requests have been made. So we'll know more here in the weeks to come, kind of how some of these dominoes are going to fall. But I mean, there's some interesting combinations, landing spots, opportunities for some coaches, and I guess good for the NFL in general. We're talking about a lot of minority coaches too, right? I mean, which has kind of been the knock in that coaching sphere the last couple seasons in the NFL is, it's just white guys. Well, now, between Bieniemy possibly staying there in Washington, um, Pierce there in Las Vegas, you have the Giants, or not the Giants, excuse me, the Lions coordinator, is it Dan Johnson, right? Is
Aaron Glenn, I believe.
Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Wait,
so, I mean,
Ben Johnson is the Lions offensive
coordinator. Yes.
Yeah.
But their defensive coordinator is
Aaron Glenn.
Aaron Glenn, right? Another coach of color. So, I think if you're the NFL, you have to be happy, at least to some extent, right? That maybe you're able to finally kick this, white guy club down the road a little bit, because we've said on this show, like, there's been some guys overlooked that shouldn't have been overlooked. And for whatever reason, they weren't ready. They weren't in the good old boys club, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I've pounded the table that Eric Bieniemy should have had a shot. Whether he'd excel or not remains to be seen. But Eric Bieniemy should have had a shot to be a head coach by now with some of the turds that we've seen coming up and going out in the coaching circles. So if you are the NFL, you have to be at least mildly enthused that there are 3 or 4 really strong head coaching candidates that are all minorities.
Right. Well, and the Patriots hired from within
Jared Mayo.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see it. Go ahead.
Sorry, just to put to that, like, we're seeing this trend of guys that can connect, right? The league is getting younger, right? Well, many of these owners keep getting much older. God, did you see Jerry after that loss? Looked like he was the crypt keeper when he gave his little press conference. But the league is getting younger, and these coaches need to be able to connect with younger players, right? Sean McVay, classic example. Everybody, when he got hired, was like, he's so young. He's a hell of a coach, right? Took the team to the Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, took it to 2 Super Bowls and won one of them. We're seeing that now. So, like, you got your Mike McDaniels down there in Miami. younger guy, right? But connects with the players really well. D'Amico Ryans, younger guy, but connects with the players. So like these players coaches, right? That seems to be the new theme of these head coaches in the NFL. If you're not, a guy who can connect with these players, Dan Campbell can connect with these guys, or at least convince them of, what he has done. But it feels like a lot of this, experience matters and connection matters with these head coaching hires, at least with the successful pairs, the successful ones. So is Bill Belichick? Yeah, the dude's probably forgotten more football than, 90% of the people will ever know about. But can he connect with players? Can he connect with a 22-year-old that's, figuring out how to be an adult coming out of college, or, will that work? How long does it work? Because obviously it stopped working in New England. And that's why they parted ways mutually.
No, there's certainly something to that. It'll be interesting to see how these things shake out and how that kind of rock and rolls through there. And very interested to see here over the next weeks where the pieces start kind of falling into place. So be very interesting there. So any other thoughts here on the coaching carousel? We ready to talk about some the wild card game that we had going and our picks for the divisional round.
Yeah, we can move on over.
All righty. So let's go ahead and we'll head on over into the recap of the eliminator playoff game that we're playing here, and then we'll hit up our picks for the divisional on how we assembled our team. And for anybody that didn't catch how we were playing this one last week, it's an eliminator. So once a player is utilized in a roster, you're unable to repick them again. And also, if a guy's not playing, it doesn't make much sense to put him on your roster. But that's neither here nor there. Half-point PPR scoring, and the results for last week. I ended up taking the cake on Wildcard Weekend here, with a team led heavily by Baker and Puka, and CD had a pretty darn good game there as well from a fantasy perspective. But any thoughts, any surprises that really kind of stood out here for Wildcard Weekend on our game?
Kyron getting hurt, that didn't help.
Yeah,
Kyron was a tough one.
Yeah.
And we all had a share of him. Like I had him as my flex. You guys had him as your running back. And as it turns out, that was a poor decision on my part to use him in the flex, because my running back, while a solid week for David Montgomery, not spectacular by any means, and certainly not enough to make up the difference of a Puka Nacua.
Yeah, I think for all of us, it was the player that none of us picked was Nico Collins, just going off against the Cleveland defense, right? Like I think we all shied away from that one a little bit. And even good on Alex for grabbing Stroud, because being able to have a piece of that was definitely beneficial. But man, missing out on Nico in the wild card round kind of hurt. Mike Evans was a bit of a surprise. I thought he would have been able to do a little bit more against Philly's defense, who had been kind of like Swiss cheese in the passing game, and he was held to 3 for 48. So I was a little shocked by that. But yeah, I mean, the Puka call was great by Derek and I. I mean, that one was great, and I only wish I could have paired it up with like a Nico, because between the two of them, that would have been big time difference.
Yes, it would have been amazing. But
yeah, and realistically, Kevin, that your downfall was Joe Flacco's second interception.
Yeah,
like
in general, right? The fact that he had been 300 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns, and yes, the turnovers were absolutely possible, right? In his starts, he averaged 2 interceptions a game.
Yeah,
in his starts since he returned, and that's hard to sustain winning football doing that. But I thought for sure the touchdowns might be there, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah. The 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions, really. I mean, he still got over 300 yards, but you're missing out on the touchdowns.
I mean, realistically, he threw 3 touchdown passes. The only problem was 2 of them were the wrong team.
Right. But yeah, I mean, Jordan Love's performance, same way, almost like Nico Collins, right? Jordan Love had a great performance.
Yeah. And both of those
Aaron
guys
Jones.
Yeah.
And we were lamenting kind of before we got on the show here about this, but Kevin, you were saying, well, I was going to save the CD Dak stack for later in the playoffs. Now that is no longer an option for you,
right? Exactly. So I went with a similar thought process with a different team here for this week.
Yeah.
So that'll be good. Be interesting to see how this one plays out there. How we assemble our teams for the divisional round. Go ahead and break that down.
All right, we'll start with quarterback, and I'm gonna, Derek I have gone to the church of Derek. He has shown me the ways of Baker Mayfield, and I'm gonna take him this week. So I'm gonna take Baker. I tell you the reason that I like Baker the most of any of the quarterbacks that are playing this week. It's the only game inside, so I'm thrilled that weather is not going to be a factor during the course of that game. So give me the quarterback that can flat out sling it and doesn't have to worry about if it's raining or snowy or cold. I'll take Baker.
Fair enough. Yes, the legend of Baker grows. I'm going to take, and this might be one of those that I'm going to regret this in probably 2-3 weeks here, but regardless, I'm gonna buckle down and take this one. I'm gonna take Lamar Jackson this week at the QB range. Hopefully, hopefully I'll still have an option for QB here in the old SB round, but we're going with Lamar.
No, and I'm gonna go with Jared Goff at home this week. I played really well against the Rams. I think he can play very well against Tampa Bay. So I'm going to take Jared Goff at home with Detroit, having a chance to make the conference championship on the line.
I like it. Let's go ahead and head to the running backs.
Okay, so again, I did the same thing that you guys did. I'm the odd man out here, like I was last week. I'm not in love with any of the running back options. I already burned a David Montgomery, and I don't want to play the CMC card yet. I would like to save that for later. So I'm going to go Isaiah Pacheco, who got plenty of run in that game against Miami. Granted, it was -7 and water bottles were freezing the second you took them out of the refrigerator. But he got plenty of run. I think, again, weather's going to be a factor there in Buffalo. It's going to be cold again. I'll take Pacheco. He's playing, isn't he? I was looking to see. He's playing, isn't he?
At this point, it's locked in. I'm going to take Aaron Jones. Maybe it might be hoping for a repeat performance of that monster 3 touchdown performance there, but I'm going to go with Aaron Jones. A little bit tougher matchup there going up against the Niners, but for the Packers to really seem to have a shot at winning games, Aaron Jones has been needed to be featured, and so I'm going to go with the fact that he'll be featured in this game, and they'll find a way to utilize him, whether it's through the air or whether it's on the ground.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Derek. I'm taking Jones as well this week. I think it's just the usage that he gets, right? In the passing game, in the running game, in the red zone. AJ Dillon being dinged up helps this Aaron Jones play quite a bit. And for the Packers to keep up, they do have to be able to maintain ball control. And Aaron Jones, since being healthy finally after being hurt for a large part of the season, now that he's been healthy, he has been a major factor in this Packers offense and what they've been able to do to stay successful and get hot at the right time.
I like it. Let's head over to the wide receivers.
Again, I'm going to talk myself out of this. All right. Well, all right. I picked Nico in the hopes that maybe he can replicate what he did last week. I know it's going to be tough. That Baltimore defense is filthy. That game is at Baltimore. Maybe I'll get some garbage time stuff that will help me make some points up. But I'm going to go Nico Collins. He's proven that he is a factor. And if Baltimore takes away one factor of the game, I still think that Nico can get his.
Fair enough. I am going to go with Mike Evans this week. Right? They're playing in a dome. Detroit's run defense has been exceptionally good all season long. Where they've been beatable is through the air, and so I do think that that's where they're going to try and rock and roll is through the air in Tampa Bay, and for Tampa Bay's offense to try and keep this game close, to try and win this thing. And so I do think that we see a Mike Evans sighting on this one. We did just see Puka Nacua absolutely blow up that secondary for 180 yards there. So I'm gonna hope that we see a repeat big game performance against Detroit passing defense.
Fair enough. I am going to go with a little mini stack here. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown to pair up with my Jared Goff at quarterback. So, again, I expect Goff to have a big game at home. I think St. Brown will do the same thing, seeing a massive target share, playing out of the slot, allowing him to kind of free up, although they are moving him around a little bit. But the Lions have done a good job keeping St. Brown's floor extremely high this season, right? So I'm banking off the fact that he's going to see, 8 to 10 targets and 7 to 9 receptions is what I'm expecting here out of Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I like his potential to get into the end zone here while the Lions are at home. In a dome where there's no weather and I don't have to worry about Jared Goff throwing ducks.
Fair enough. I like it. Let's go to the tight ends.
So for all of the reasons, Derek, that you picked Mike Evans, I'm going to take Cade Otton, who actually led the Bucs in receptions. I think he had 8 against Philadelphia. So I'm going to go Cade Otton here in the hopes that I might still have Mr. Taylor Swift to use later in these playoffs, which is a little foreshadowing about where I'm leaning for our picks that we're going to make later.
All righty. So tight end, I'm taking Travis Kelce at this point, right? Like this should be a very good matchup here between the Bills and the Chiefs. Yeah, this might finally be the time that we see the Bills bounce the Chiefs. It wouldn't surprise me on that one. So I'm going to take the Travis Kelce pick while I can take the Travis Kelce pick here.
No, I kind of did the same thing. I don't have the utmost confidence that the Chiefs are going to get past the Bills on the road in Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game. So I'm going to take Travis as well in hopes that he can help generate a little bit of offense here for the Kansas City Chiefs.
I like it. Let's hit up the flex.
So you guys had Aaron Jones in your running back. I'm going to take Aaron Jones here in the flex. Hopefully this is not the kiss of death like Kyron was last week for all of us, where you guys had Kyron in your running back spot. I took him in the flex, and then he ended up putting up a dud and getting hurt.
Fair enough. I'm going to take the Nico Collins route on this one. I do think that, right, in order for the Texans to try and keep this game close, it's going to rely on C.J. Stroud and his right arm. And Nico Collins is certainly the favorite target there. Noah Brown went on the IR. Tank Dell already on the IR. It is the Nico Collins show. So that's where I'm leaning on this one.
I wanted to go Nico Collins, but I just couldn't with Baltimore. So I went Jaden Reed. Again, he has been another player that's been a linchpin for the Green Bay Packers and their success. And they use him in very similar ways that the San Francisco 49ers use Debo. So it'll be kind of an interesting head-to-head matchup, if you will, between how Debo is used and Jaden Reed is used. But I do suspect that San Francisco wins this game. So I'm using Reed there for hopefully some extra garbage time points as the Packers are making a push to come back.
Fair enough.
It's interesting. Aside from Derek's pick of Lamar, we are staying away from the number 1 seeds, right? One Baltimore Ravens player, no 49ers players, which I think means that we expect these guys to go for a while, and a lot of flavor on the Sunday games. Not too many Bills players.
I am intentionally staying away from the AFC.
That's fair.
Because I want to guarantee that I have tons of players to pick for this.
That's good.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's just one of the ways that you formulate around this. And I've decided to lean on the NFC through the Wildcard Divisional and quite possibly Conference Championship round. I'm going to leave the AFC alone. So that way, whichever AFC team gets there, I have a full pick of the litter outside of Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I like it. If only I'd thought about that too. Oh man.
Yeah, that's a
Something
brilliant.
to remember for next year.
Can we go back? Start this game over.
All right. All righty. Any other thoughts here on the game? Or are we ready to do some pick'ems?
Let's pick.
All right, Alex, you go ahead and rock and roll this segment here, and we'll play along with you.
Okay. All right. So, do you guys shoot? Let's do the spread because we might as well. It's fun. We're gonna do spreads. We'll do over-unders as well. So we'll just kind of rapid fire this off. I'm going off of what ESPN is saying. So or ESPN bet that they have now. All right. So Houston is a 7.5-point underdog at Baltimore. The over-under is 48.5. I'll start. I'm going to take Baltimore minus the 7.5. And I think I'll take the under.
Alrighty. You know what? As much as I want to lean on the Baltimore there, 7.5, I just don't like that hook. I think that this is a touchdown game when it's all said and done. So I'm going to lean on Houston to bring this thing to fruition. And I think this is a game that we can see some points come into play. So I'm going to take the over.
I'm going to go with Houston as well. I think Lamar being off for 2 weeks, potentially rust. I mean, we've seen stranger things happen after players have sat for 2 weeks. So some potential rust there out of Lamar Jackson. So I think Houston keeps it within the touchdown. I'm going to go with the under in this game, though. I think 47, 48 points might be the cap on this one, unless we see crazy defensive touchdowns like we did last week. And if that's the case, then yeah, the over is going to hit.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, next game up, the second game there on Saturday features the other number 1 seed, Green Bay, an 8.5-point underdog at San Francisco, over under 50.5. Give me San Fran. Give me the over.
Fair enough. As much as I want to get down on that one, I think that I'm going to take the Pack. For whatever reason, Green Bay is playing really good football on both sides of the ball. So San Francisco. But again, I think this is one of those that this game can be inside of a 1-possession game when it's all said and done. So I think San Francisco still wins and probably does so by about a touchdown, but not a fan of that 8.5. So I'm going to go the Green Bay shot. I am going to take the under on this one. Both of these defenses have been playing pretty darn well down the stretch, and I think that we see some defense show up here. Would expect this game in the 27 to 21, 28-21 type of deal. So we get close, but just under.
Oh, excuse me. I'm taking San Francisco in the over here. I think they're going to show why they're the class of the NFC. I do think Green Bay is going to be able to put up some points here in throughout the game. Like, I don't think they're going to get blown out right out of the gate, but I do think San Francisco pulls away late, and we show why they were the number 1 seed in the NFC.
All right. Next game on Sunday. Tampa Bay travels to Detroit. Tampa Bay, a 6.5 point underdog. The over-under here is 48.5. Let me do some quick math here. I'm going to take Tampa Bay to cover. I think Detroit wins, but I'll take Tampa Bay to cover, and I will take the over in like a 27-24 type game, which gets me to 51, which is over the 48.5.
Yeah, this one is going to very much depend on which Baker we get in this one, right? Like if we get the Baker that showed up last week, like this game is going to get into shootout type of territory, and it's going to be a very fun and exciting game where this whoever has the ball at last probably wins type of deal. But I just don't know how much that magic can ride through here. So I do think, you know what? No, we're gonna roll with it. We're gonna take the Baker magic continuing here. We're gonna take Tampa Bay. We're gonna take the over.
I'm going to go Detroit in the over. I think they win this one walking away.
Fair enough.
Cinderella slipper is not a fit for the Buccaneers.
Well, I about went Detroit, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it.
All right, final game, the lowest of the point spreads. Kansas City, a 3-point underdog. Interestingly enough, the Bills not getting the hook at home. So 3 points, over-under is 45.5. It's going to be 20 degrees there at Orchard Park. Don't think it's going to be all the snow that we saw, which ended up not being a factor. But keep in mind, Buffalo on 2 fewer days of rest than Kansas City, but they get to stay home. I'm going to take Kansas City. I think they win outright, and I will take the over.
Fair enough. I am going the Buffalo on this one. I do think that this is the one that we see Josh Allen get the better of Mahomes here in the playoffs and proceed on. It's interesting when you're talking about 20 degrees. 20 degrees is kind of a magic number when it comes to a lot of the point totals out there, where they traditionally tend to favor the under on that one. So I'm going with the under on this thing. I do see Buffalo sneaking out a win, but realistically, this feels more like a push type of game. And I think we're going to see a 24-21 type of final score on this thing with Buffalo winning. So that being the case, I'm still going to lean the Buffalo side.
I am going to go with Kansas City, but Buffalo wins this game last second field goal.
I like it.
By 2, by 1 or 2.
Call. That's a call right there. You got the over, you got the under.
I'm going to take the under.
Fair enough.
I don't trust the way Kansas City's offense has been playing lately, taking over with them right now.
It's been pretty rough. And to see what this show does on the road, I was encouraged to see that they could play in cold weather, which, I mean, we needed to see. I needed to see, at least when you're heading to Orchard Park.
Yeah. No, the defense is going to be legit, man. Like Kansas City's defense is carrying this team. So I think that the cold weather, the Bills defense has been playing much better, but their secondary's been really good. And if you're Buffalo, you're really keyed in. You're keyed in on 2 guys, right? You're keyed in on Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. And I don't know that you're not worried about Miko Hardman. You're not worried about Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You're not worried about, if Sky Moore plays. You're not worried about if Kadarius Toney plays. Like, I don't think you're concerned about any of that. The Chiefs are trying to get the ball into the hands of their playmakers, which is a great strategy, but they don't have enough playmakers that can consistently come down with the ball, and I think that's why they end up falling a bit short.
Fair enough. Also saw that I believe Von Miller is going to make his appearance here for the Bills as well. So
Ooh, hot diggity.
they may get some help along the pass rush there as well. So could be interesting for sure.
That would
Any other thoughts here on this one? Or on any of the games in general this weekend?
I hope this weekend's better than last weekend.
Golly,
Yes.
Spreads don't suggest that they're going to be, but that's okay. I'm hoping the gameplay in general is better.
And weather is not going to be as much of a factor. I don't think. I mean, it's going to be cold. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be cold, but I don't think there's any snowstorms or record-breaking snowstorms that are going to move through either the Baltimore or Buffalo areas again. And of course, Detroit's playing inside, and it's always beautiful in Santa Clara.
So, fair enough. Any other thoughts here on anything we want to rock and roll through tonight?
No, right? We'll figure out more about the coaching stuff as it goes along. Right now, it's all about the playoffs. The congratulations to the 8 teams remaining on a good season thus far. Good luck to everybody here this weekend if you're betting props or betting games. But again, hoping for a good weekend here, and we'll catch everybody next week as we get ready for championship weekend.
I like it. Alex, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, crazy. I saw a thing today. We're 26 days away from the Super Bowl, which is a month, right? Which is wild that we're playing the Super Bowl that late, but we're also less than a month away from the Super Bowl. So we're getting down to it.
Absolutely. Coming down to the end of it. I like it. And still some good football left this season. So should be a good one. That's going to do it for us tonight. And appreciate everybody tuning in along the way all season long. It's been a blast talking some football with y'all and talking some fantasy along the way as well. So, but that's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. You can find us on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the places at Good Old Boys FF. Do us a favor. Head over to that YouTube channel. Click that subscribe button. Ring that bell. Help the boys out there. But that'll do it for us. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.